Hey guys, today I want to take a look at getByLabelText from React Testing Library. Now, what getByLabelText means, or what it does, is simply to look for a particular label with the text provided to it and relate that label to a form input. So let's see how that works. Right? So let's have a test. So should have a label text. All right, cool. And so oops, shouldn't do that. So I expect the get by label. So I expect a label to exist in the page. So the label should be what? Name. So let's say, for example, you are dealing with a form that takes in what the user's name. So there should be a label describing it, saying that the text takes in what the name, right? So let's save that. So obviously there is no label inside the form, so the test would fail, and that's what you expect. So the test is failing, which is okay. So now we are going to add the label. So let's add a label. We are not going to provide the HTML4 right now. We want to see how this behaves. So let's have a simple label and let's look at the output. So it fails, right? It fails. Let's see what testing library is saying. So it's saying that I found a label with the text of name, but there is no form control, or there is no input that relates this label to. So React testing library expects that for labels, they should relate to the it should have control of an input, right? So let's add an input here. So input, so a simple input, and let's see how this goes. So we've placed an input inside the label, and as you can see, it passes. So obviously this label will control this input given to it by default. So in a case like this, you don't need to provide the HTML the for attribute. You don't need to provide it. But in case where the input isn't in the label but outside, based on whatever your preference is, let's see how the test outputs. It fails. Now the reason for this is obviously the label has no relation to this input. So we need to provide that relation between the input and the label, and we can do that using the for attribute for the label and having the corresponding value id to the input. So let's have for. Oops. So obviously in React, they don't allow you to use the normal for, so you have HTML4. So let's say this is a test. So we added the for, then we have an ID of what? For this input to be also what? Test. And let's see how that outputs, or what the test gives us. So it passes, right? So this is also another way of relating the labels to the input or the form controls. So it can go both ways, whether you can place the form control inside the label or have it outside. If it's outside, then you need to provide the for attribute and the id attributes to the label and the input respectively. So that's it. But there's also another case here. So let's have the same inputs appearing twice, but with the same ID, and let's see how React testing library will resolve that. So it says that it's passing, And the reason for this is both of them have the same ID that relates to what the HTML, what the for attribute. And in cases for like radio buttons, checkboxes, we do know that all of them should have what a name attribute. That's the same for all of those things. So let's change. So let me say this name, right? Let's change this to radio, this to also radio. Oops. And they should have the same name. So name is more of like a kind of like a key used for form objects. Like you are giving a key value pair to the form object. So that's basically what the name is. So both of them have the same name, but their values can vary. So this one, let's say, is yes, and this one value, let's say, is no. Right? So the values can be different. The names should be the same. The IDs should be the same, because when you are like clicking on radio buttons in the actual browser or wherever it is, you know that when you click on it, it changes, it toggles between the different values. So the first one is to select, the others to deselect, and the others, right? So that's the same way it applies to a case like this, right? So you can have the same HTML for the same label, but relates to multiple inputs based on the ID. So when you perform events on that particular label, it will correspond to the particular form control or the input that is related to it. So that's it for this video. In the next video, we're going to take a look at a little bit more intermediate or advanced levels in testing, where we are going to be dealing with states, how to test React states and all that, right? So that's it for this video. Thanks for sticking by, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.